Well, good evening. Welcome to the 84 Million podcast. It's been a little while since we put any episodes out, but I do promise that I'm working on getting folks lined up to come on and share with us here. But without further ado, we clearly have a friend with us today, Mr. Doge Cuban. Thanks for joining us.
Not a
Um,
problem.
you're known on Twitter primarily. You may be in other spaces, but that's where I found you. And you're known as the Dogecoin legend, Litecoin ambassador, Bitcoin believer, and clearly you're not actually Mark Cuban. I'm a little disappointed. I thought he would be sitting here with me. I'm just joking. Um, but anyway, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming to the 84 Million podcast.
Hey, no problem, man. It's good to be on here. This is actually my first podcast I've ever done. I did something with somebody like a year and a half ago or something, but it was never like about crypto or anything. It was just kind of like a general podcast. So this is going to be like something completely different I've never done before.
Yeah, and very good. And I can see your actual profile picture resembles the living man
Yes, sir.
because we
I mean,
never
it's
actually know.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I could be, I could have been anybody, but yeah, that's just kind of like a one of those AI generated. I paid like $3.99 for a whole bundle, and that was
Yeah.
probably my favorite one.
Yeah, they look good. I like the presentation and I can see the resemblance. But seriously, I don't, maybe this is true of all of us on Twitter, most of us on Twitter, we don't know what people actually look like. But now we get to actually see people face to face. So sometimes it's surprising, sometimes it's not. Either way, welcome. Glad you're here. Seeing that we're a Litecoin podcast, but tonight Doge Cuban is with us. We're going to shift that kind of towards Dogecoin tonight. So I guess this is going to be the most fun podcast we've ever had. Now, with 3 episodes, there's not a whole lot to compete with. But can you guarantee we will have the most fun we've ever had on the show?
Absolutely, and I wore my Litecoin shirt tonight just for you.
Very nice. That was released from the foundation, or
I
did you
don't
find it
remember.
somewhere online?
I just found it somewhere on some website. I think it was like Amazon or something like that.
It's a nice shirt. That's like the supreme kind of look. I think they at the foundation. I think they had one of those at one point, or maybe it was the hodl in the supreme kind of
Mhm.
interface. But either way, great shirt, very appropriate. And I have your friend here, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Doge, the wonderful
Love,
Nakamoto Standard
love
on
it.
my shirt this evening. But we're glad to talk about Doge. I think the Doge community is an interesting one. I think the relationship between Dogecoin and Litecoin is an interesting one. So we're going to get into it. As
Awesome.
always, these are non-scripted. I have some questions. We're going to share, kind of ad lib and see where it goes. Neither of us are professionals. We don't offer any kind of advice. We just share based on what we're currently feeling. And hopefully, this will serve as a resource for future folks who will tune in tomorrow when this is published or at some point in the future that they can learn a little bit about Litecoin and Dogecoin. So let's see. Dogecoin, what is to love about it?
Well, I mean, it's what I love about the most is like whenever you first get into it, whenever you first look into it, it's not a whole lot of like tech heads. There's not a lot of people who are, um, you know, well educated in the crypto space, so to speak. It's a lot of common people, and I think that's where it was like most relatable to the normal person. You go and talk to anybody on the street who owns crypto. A lot of times, the first thing they're going to say is they bought in the Dogecoin. So that's kind of what kind of drew me to the space. Is just it just seemed like a collective of just regular everyday people, and I think that's one of the most important foundations of Dogecoin is just the introduction from Doge to the rest of the crypto space.
And how would you describe Dogecoin to someone else? Or what would you, like, what are some basics you share with someone who may not know about Dogecoin, um, or what led you into it?
So I also just kind of bought it as a joke back in like 2020,
Hmm.
2019, around there. Threw a couple $100 in it just because why not? And it turned out to be this this big thing, and it led me to look into it. So to the normal everyday person who asks me what it is, after you get past the part where it's a funny yellow dog, you break it down to them, and I always describe it as just a digital peer-to-peer currency where you can make a you can make a first person, or you can make a transaction without the need of a third party, and you don't have to be face to face. So, and that's kind of how I introduced it to somebody who doesn't know anything.
Do you find that people take you up on it
No.
in real life versus Twitter?
So, yes and no. Most people are kind of just like, they're kind of, everyone's kind of going to be standoffish of it, just because it's something new and it's something that they're not really used to. Some people have taken me up on it. They've kind of looked into it a little bit more, but most of them just kind of write it off. It's just a funny yellow dog joke. But I don't think it's. I do think it is kind of overlooked when it comes to the whole joke aspect of it, because at the end of the day, it can be actually used as a serious currency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is interesting because it was created. I was aware of it a little bit before you. I don't know if I was aware of it like launch year, but kind of 2015, 14. No, probably before that. I think I knew about it back whenever they did the NAS. I think they sponsored a NASCAR at one point several years ago, but I just knew about it as it's a cryptocurrency. It's like a tip. It's a tip currency. So there's Bitcoin, there's Litecoin, and now we have Dogecoin if we want to be kind of have some levity and send folks tips on message boards or whatever. And that's kind of how I always thought of it. A few years ago, I didn't, in fact, take it all that seriously. And indeed, it was intended to be a joke, yet. And even our first guest, who's a wonderful guy, David Burkett, not a super big fan of Dogecoin. But we both agreed it's persisted since its launch. It's
Yeah.
still here. It's obviously more known now than ever before. Yet this was this inconsequential joke coin with a dog on it. So I've come to change my mind on Doge over the years, and maybe we'll talk about that in a little bit. So you kind of just stumbled into this. Where did you hear about Dogecoin?
Honestly, Robinhood. I mean, I think that's where a lot of people kind of heard about it first, is
Mm-hmm.
Robinhood. Robinhood was the first, like, it was the most popular app that people use to trade stocks,
Mm-hmm.
at least where I'm from. And they put the cryptocurrencies on there, and there's this weird one on there, and no one really knows what it is. It's Doge. And you're looking at it and you're like, it's what, 0.002 of a cent. It's kind of just like, oh, you can own a whole bunch for a little. I remember on my way to work one day, and I was looking at it, and I called my buddy up and I said, what is this Dodge thing on my, what is this? And he's like, oh, it's Dogecoin. It started as a joke, yada yada yada, to cryptocurrency. And that's kind of when I first heard about it, and then didn't think much about it from there up until early 2021, going into 21, whenever it first started kind of getting its legs underneath it.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Yeah, and that's another thing you mentioned, the pronunciations, and there's been an argument on, how do we actually say this? I was eating dinner with someone several years ago, and we were in California at the time, and like, oh, did you see what happened to Dogecoin? It's up thousands of percent. And that was when it was fractions of a penny, but it's always
Right.
had extreme movements. But I think, it's certainly gotten legs the past few years with the Elon phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's certainly fascinating. And it's withstood it at the same time. And I think there's a bright future for Dogecoin, to be fair. Again, I've changed my mind over the course of time from discovery, kind of recognition, to seeing how it operates in the world, or how it may operate in the world going forward, if we truly want a decentralized future, and if we are able to have a free monetary system based on certain cryptocurrencies and certain consensus um, and code. I'll pause there. We'll get back to that. Um, so we've talked about why you love Dogecoin, how you got to Dogecoin. I think something that is interesting to me is the relationship between Litecoin and Dogecoin. So Litecoin, created by Charlie in 2011, was and is a script or S script mined cryptocurrency, right?
Mm-hmm.
Few people, well, probably our show Litecoiners would know this, but not everybody knows that Dogecoin is, of course, a version or a fork of Litecoin, right? Albeit with some change in the code. Um, which means it does not have, there's 21 million Bitcoin, there's 81 million Litecoin. There is
Right.
no cap on Dogecoin. But anyway, it's S script mined. I think it's a fascinating thing to consider that Dogecoin serves as what it has been referred to as a tail emission for Litecoin when the final Litecoin is actually mined
Exactly.
down in the distant future. What's your opinion on S script or just the relationship between Dogecoin and Litecoin? And do you find that people even know about that relationship?
Yeah. So, I mean, it took me a little over a year to really even look into Litecoin. It's kind of just whenever you kind of go in Doge first, and then you start expanding your horizons. Um, I won't lie to you. Whenever I first looked into Litecoin, I just thought it was this old, dated cryptocurrency. Um, didn't know its purpose or anything like that. So, if anything, you always hear about miners selling either or holding either or. I always thought, if I ever mined Doge and Litecoin, I'd probably just sell my Litecoin. I didn't think about it as more than just just a merge mine coin. Um, it wasn't until the bear market really sank in that I started looking more into Litecoin and the correlation between Litecoin and Dogecoin. Um, and they kind of have a symbiotic relationship. And the fact that they both have been around this whole time is really important to note because what I thought was just some old cryptocurrency. That's actually a key factor into it. It is an old cryptocurrency. Why is it still here? So I think moving forward, if we want to have a free, open, decentralized economy, um, you got to have choice in your market makers. And this is where this is kind of where if I talk to like a Bitcoin maximalist, this is where their argument would fall apart because if you're just centralized on Bitcoin, doesn't that kind of centralize the market? And the whole point of it is for decentralization. Um, and then you have your Dogecoin, your Litecoin, and they use completely different mining algorithm. So they're not necessarily competing and for space for Bitcoin. Uh, but I think of Litecoin as sort of a good buffer, somewhere for your because we're going to see some volatility in the market, especially if Dogecoin, if whatever Elon has planned for it happens and XYZ happens. And this is all speculation, of course, but Litecoin would be the best sort of cushion for that volatility. When you have those blow off the top events and stuff like that, swapping into Litecoin could be a good option. Um, but kind of going back to when I started to look into Litecoin
Mm-hmm.
during the bear market, uh, you know, you look at Litecoin, once it hit the bottom, I think it was in June of 22 or so, it never saw those lows again where you were having lows from Bitcoin because of FTX, and Litecoin held strong. It held strong through everything. So that's kind of what drawn me to it. I started, throwing, $5 here, $5 there, just to see what happens, and it just kind of, and it really impressed me with how well it was able to hold its own once it hit that bottom mark. And Dogecoin did, fairly well once it hit that bottom. Although it is down significantly, but once it hit that bottom in June, uh, it was able to maintain a price above that bottom, whereas Bitcoin was falling below. Uh, and Litecoin did the same thing, but better. And that's kind of what made me kind of a Litecoin believer, and made me kind of lean more towards believing in what its abilities and looking into it and what it's capable of.
Yeah, I think Litecoin can be overlooked. I think fewer people are overlooking it now, although people do still overlook it despite its history and track record and the new privacy features that are available on it. Of course, you have the maximalists, which are really hard nosed to anything not Bitcoin. Despite concessions into second layers and all sorts of other trusted situations. But I think Litecoin's time, in many ways, you can already say its time has already come because of so much has happened in it. The community's only grown. The use cases have grown. The hash rate's going up. I mean, it's so many different metrics other than a price on a ticker,
Right.
has expanded and grown, and I think that's interesting, in terms of which of the big coins. Dogecoin, I would consider with market cap. It's a big coin. After Elon and it, shot up. What was the height? 50s, 60s?
Uh, I think it was like
Maybe
75 cents.
it was 75. I don't.
I think it might have been like a short wick, but I think it hit 75 cents.
And it may have, and unfortunately, I don't remember. But I remember it was very impressive because it was sub penny, and then it went. It was significant. So a lot of the market cap, it increased in market cap, dropped in
Yeah.
terms of ranking. So that's a big coin. That's a top coin in my view, and I think most would agree with me. If you're basing it on market cap, and then you have Bitcoin had done that, above 60,000, et cetera. And then Litecoin, that's the one. I'll call them blue chip. If we want to use the traditional kind of stock language, the one blue chip crypto, if you will, that has not done that move yet. So again, I kind of can cringe with price predictions because so many times we're wrong. However, I do think Litecoin, from what I can tell, is winding up to increase to possibly 4 digits. I think that's an inevitability. I will not put a date on it. Too many of us have, and it's doesn't always work out. But I think there's a bright future for Doge as well as Litecoin. But yeah, I think there's something really, really significant about both of them, their relationship, them having been overlooked. Not so much Dogecoin anymore, but Litecoin to a degree yet. And I think it's just a matter of time until that changes. Let's get back to Dogecoin, just in case there's any Litecoiners who don't know, or you're new to this whole community and you just stumbled upon this content, or was share with you, whatever your story is. Who created? Do we have a creator for Dogecoin? I know Charlie Lee created Litecoin. He's a public face. We hear about him from time to time. He's on Twitter. He'll be at the Litecoin Summit. Who created Dogecoin? Do we know?
So it was a couple software engineers, Billy Marcus and Jackson Palmer, and it's kind of funny how it started. It just started kind of as a joke, but I think in a way that kind of aided it in the future because it made it one of the fairest launches you can get in crypto. If you think about it, it being started as a joke is it's a pretty fair launch. If no one believed in it to begin with, not even the creators believed in it, then I think in a way it's a bonus if you look at it in terms of decentralization.
Can you explain the launch for me, for all of us?
What they created.
How it was distributed? Was it pre-mined? Was there certain
Uh,
batches of people that got boatloads of them? How did it work? I mean, I know it's proof of work. I know it's
there,
S script. So obviously, a mining algorithm, you have to add
there,
resources to get them. But
I don't know all the facts about it, but from what Billy has said, It seemed like it was a joke. It was created. There was no pre-launch, no pre-mine, um, which again that goes into helping it for later decentralization purposes. And he, I think he said he created it in 30 minutes in his underwear, and it's basically just like 80% Bitcoin code with a dog on it, and that's generally the story. And then it was used as a tipping currency. That's that's about the extent of it.
Well, it's Litecoin code, which is Bitcoin code. We have to make that distinction. Very
It,
good.
it's all Bitcoin code at the end of the day.
This is true. And it was created by, as you said, Billy Marcus and Jackson Palmer in 2013. Um, it was created to be a meme coin, yeah, and for online tipping. It's interesting, if we look at kind of the block zero messages, if we look at the block zero message for Bitcoin, it was about the chancellor on the brink of a bailout, kind of appropriate and prescient in its time as a warning of the financial systems, on the edge here. And here's our alternative. That was the Bitcoin kind of Genesis block inscription. And then you have something when Litecoin came out, it was Steve Jobs, Apple's visionary, dies at 56. And that was their block zero message. Is there a block zero message for Dogecoin? And it must be very significant if it is.
It was like Nintendo something. I can't remember off the top of my head. It was like it wasn't some kind of cool message or anything. It was like Nintendo something.
Yeah, I think it was Nintendo.
Nintendo, yes.
It wasn't
Nintendo.
even, it was kind of like a variant of Nintendo. If you ever want to go, you can look up these wonderful, artifacts of history and code on like a block chair explorer. You can go and look at the Coinbase data, and indeed it is Nintendo, Nintondo. So highly significant, but I think that's beautiful. That's like perfect. Like Dogecoin's Genesis block message is Nintendo. Like you can't get any better than that. And I think that maybe is why. I mean, we're laughing about this now. It really does actually kind of bring this sort of fun and I don't know. I'm not going to call it joy. We don't have like resounding joy with our Dogecoin, but there's something really fun and light about it. And I think Elon's talked a lot about that, and I think that really has been a part of its story since the beginning. So I think that's really really interesting. And of course, they're the first meme coin, right? The Shiba Inu, the Shibes was the community of folks that. What do you still go by Shibes? Or is it like the Dogecoin community? What is it in 2023? Again, I'm not historically a part of that group, but I was aware of it kind of on the periphery. And that's gone through iterations too.
Yeah, it's kind of a collection of just a bunch of internet nerds and regular people.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest with you, I mean, I guess they still go by Sheebs or whatever. I'm kind of here and there. I don't really. I look at myself as like a collective of the whole crypto picture.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily just Dogecoin centric army. Although I was part of that, and again, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about it being a lot of regular people, a lot of like-minded regular people who were just looking for a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Just looking for a chance to get out of the system. That was what Dogecoin army was to me, at least. And it does kind of evolve over time, and I think that comes and goes with the market, of course, and it's probably like that all over the board. But what you really see, this deep into a bear market or wherever you're at, or wherever we are at, I don't know if we're in a bear market or what we are in.
Mm-hmm. Many would say we are, yeah.
Yeah, I would say we're probably still in a bear market, but what you're seeing a lot of is people who are like the aftermath of the pump, and these are people who actually believe in it.
Yeah.
Some would call them bag holders or whatever, but these are the people who see the bigger picture. So I think a lot of people that would say they're still in the Doge army, these are people who see the bigger picture. They see it as more than just the next scam coin that's floating around.
Mm-hmm.
They see the difference between a coin and a token. So I think that's kind of where they are right now. And I think that's really important for especially for the normal people, but
Mhm.
the normal people that I was referring to earlier that you run into in the Doge army. Once these normal people start realizing the difference between this is a gamble token, this is a coin, this is currency, this is Chuck E. Cheese token.
Mhm.
Once you have your general population understanding that, that's when you start to see the real shift. And that's kind of where Doge Army is right now. Is they're starting to. Now you still have your degenerate campers, no matter where you're at. But I see a lot of the core people in that community are kind of shifting more towards, okay, this is a currency. Let's see how we can build on it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's interesting. I agree with you on a few points. One, that yes, we're in more of a definitely a depressed environment. I mean, you and I aren't. We're having a great conversation in the depths of a bear market, regardless of if that changes in the coming months or maybe a year or more. Um, but I would agree, though, it can be really crickets in
Yeah.
our communities right now. Even with the believers, right? It can just get really
Mm-hmm.
quiet. We can feel engagement on Twitter. It's like, all the air has been sucked out of the room, and disappointment, for whatever reason. But I do think those who are here are worth paying attention to, because they're still here. They're not going to be, fair weather, as you say, bag holders exiting the moment the price pops. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with selling, but I am saying there's a difference in personality with those who stay and weather all these storms and continue to work and build and create within the environments, um, versus those who just hop on when times are good.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing is, you mentioned between tokens and cryptocurrency. I think that is a big distinction, and I don't know if everyone in the normal people world, or whatever we want to call them. I'm a normal person, by the way, but I guess non-crypto people
Right.
that aren't so inclined to go and read about these things, or read white papers, or test exchanges and get coins and trade with friends and whatever we tend to find fascinating. Um, they might hear of the Shiba Inu, the Floki coin, the variants of maybe a Dogecoin, and think they're all the same when clearly they're not. Can we go into that? What are some other Doge-like tokens, and how are they different? How would you differentiate them?
I mean, as far as the tokens go, they're just about all the same. But a lot of them just ripping off either Elon or the dog or anything like that. And, you know, it, and that's just because there's a lot of hype behind Dogecoin because, you got the backing of Elon behind it. Uh, and Elon's not backing it just because it's funny. Uh, it's an actual coin where a lot of these tokens are just they're code running off of the Ethereum blockchain or the Binance Coins
Mm-hmm.
whatever chain, and they're not actual they're not actual blockchains. So these other tokens they rely on liquidity pools that have to balance a certain amount of tokens versus a certain amount of the native token, whether it's commonly BNB or Ethereum. Whereas Dogecoin, you don't have to worry about that because it is its own chain. Um, which that doesn't mean someone couldn't just come up with a chain and it not be kind of like a token, but um, these tokens they literally just kind of feed off of that hype. And what's most frustrating is you want to see new people getting into the space, but you don't want to see them getting scammed, and you don't want them to see the dreaded 99 -99%. But that's normally what happens when people get involved in these tokens.
Yeah, I would agree. They're not all the same. I won't repeat what you said. I think you said it well. Dogecoin, to remind people, it is a fairly launched cryptocurrency, its own independent chain. You can download a wallet, you can run a node, you can mine it. Um,
My favorite thing
it's
to
an
do.
it's an independent entity. Granted, it is merge mined with Litecoin, but so they're jointed in that regard. But it's an independent, standalone cryptocurrency. If Binance shuts down, if Ethereum, it doesn't matter what Binance or Ethereum or Bitcoin does. Dogecoin is still Dogecoin standing.
exactly. It doesn't matter. So if Ethereum goes up, that goes down, it doesn't matter. I mean, normally two and two kind of correlate, depending on what Bitcoin's doing. But you have Ethereum going down, it doesn't matter if Bitcoin, or I'm sorry,
I mean, if
Dogecoin.
it went offline, like if there was
Oh
some, like
yeah,
they
yeah,
upgrade to the next, the next iteration of Ethereum code and it goes dreadfully wrong, which I don't
right,
likely think that's very likely, but just as an example, if one of these other prominent chains literally, like Solanified and was just offline or paused or whatever, like
right,
Doge doesn't care. Doge is an independent
exactly.
chain on its own right, despite the entire other cryptocurrency space.
Yeah, no one's halting Dogecoin,
Mhm.
and yeah, I seen that. I think it was over the summer last year where the Binance chain had to be halted or something similar to that. And you just saw these tokens just start crashing,
Mhm.
and that's because they're reliant so heavily on the Binance Smart Chain.
Yeah, they're built on top of it.
Yeah,
And maybe one day you'll have this is actually something that's happening now with Bitcoin and Litecoin with these LTC 20 tokens and BRC 20 tokens, which is really quite interesting. And that came through the route of ordinals. I don't know a ton about it, but I'm seeing where it's going. And for Litecoin, for example, we already had a second layer called OmniLite where you can launch tokens. This is a little bit different than that, but I hope to have a guest on shortly to talk about that. I'm in conversations with him, so hopefully we can unpack that in the near future. Um, but yeah, Dogecoin is its own, although maybe one day you'll have the coins on top of it. That's again a little bit of a side note, but that's what Ethereum is. That's what these coins are. The base layer is Ethereum, and then the ERC20 token is on top of it, or you have the Binance Smart Chain or Binance, and then on top of it you have the Binance based tokens. Um, but ultimately, if something happened to the base, all those tokens are gone or ineffective. You can't move them. Major problems. Not to mention they're issued. You may be able to have sophisticated code of some emission protocol, but I most of them aren't. They're kind of like, here's my max supply, hit enter, bam, they're created.
yeah,
So it's just totally different. I hope we're making it clear that Dogecoin is a fully independent chain that runs, and it's an entire blockchain. It's not based upon any other parent chain. Granted, like I said, it is merged with Litecoin, so the miners get both, but it's an independent cryptocurrency that stands alone. Do you know about any sort of like developments in for Dogecoin, or what's being done with the chain? I've heard criticisms that it hasn't really been updated and it's like running an older version of Bitcoin, so it could use some updating. I've heard, although I believe they've patched some things in maybe the last year or so. But do you know of any developments coming to Dogecoin
uh,
or anything on the horizon?
not that I can think off the top of my head. I don't really keep up too much with the developers.
Mhm.
I used to kind of keep tabs on it a little bit, but I really kind of let that kind of fall to the wayside. The last thing was really looking into that I thought was interesting, and I think they did this with Bitcoin back in the day as well, but the radio Doge, where
Okay,
they sent a transaction over radio signal instead of the your traditional internet. So
interesting. I didn't know
I
about that.
thought I thought that was really interesting, and that could be really helpful, for remote parts of the world as well if you wanted to transact in Doge. So again, I'm not very, I'm not super knowledgeable on the subject or anything like that, but I did hear about the radio Doge transactions. So I think that's something like that future wise could be really promising.
Interesting. I wasn't aware of that. Interesting concept. I'd be interested to look that up. Um, in terms of Elon, what do you think he's up to?
Um, I think he's got something planned. I think he's got something planned with Twitter. He's definitely going to integrate Dogecoin tips eventually. One of these days, it's a matter of time. And that's the one thing that's really, I think Doge could do well on its own without Elon. Elon is kind of just hyper speeding the progress on Dogecoin though, and As much as I love Dogecoin, I have to admit that Elon is just kind of taking this thing and running with it.
Hmm.
And I think he will integrate Dogecoin tips on Twitter. I think he will integrate payments somehow. I think he's going to do something with. I read something about integrating eToro into it and trading crypto on there. I think Doge is going to be really big on Twitter. I think it's going to be huge. And then as far as his other companies, the Boring Company is already accepting it for the tunnels, and I see it being used at Twitter, or I'm sorry, on the Tesla website for some merch. I think once they kind of see more results from that, I think they will implement it for their vehicles later on, just like how they did with Bitcoin. Uh, again, I'm not going to set any timetables on this, but this is why this is what I think of what Elon's up to. I think he's got a lot on his plate. It's not going to happen overnight. It might not happen this year. It might not happen next year or the year after, but something will happen eventually. Um, so I don't know what he has up his sleeve, but I know it's going to be fun.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the Boring Company perhaps could you could buy a flamethrower if he ever revisits that with Dogecoin. Yeah, he likes to have fun. Interesting person. I think it's significant that he has maintained his interest in Doge. He didn't super pump it and let it go. Like he's consistently promoting it, like
Yeah,
consistently.
yeah,
And I admire him actually for that because initially we're kind of like, where'd this come from? Maybe
yeah,
it's just an act or some statement. When it's like his consistency, and he says kids were mining it. Like there's more. He's I don't think he's going to be walking away from Doge. I would agree that I think he has a lot more that he wants to do. Again, he doesn't control it. He doesn't. But there's a fascination he has with it, and I believe he will continue to create around it or with it and
yeah,
integrate it into, for example, Twitter. And of course, we were all aware of the Twitter bird being replaced by the wonderful Shiba mascot for, I don't know if it was a day or a few hours, but I remember screenshotting it.
yeah. I think it was a couple of days, and then
Yeah.
it got taken off of there.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, it was great. I loved it. It's
Mm.
but I think Elon knows how big of a public figure he is. He
Mm.
knows how no matter what he says, it's going to be blown up, you know, blown out of proportion in the spotlight, everything. So for him to come out and kind of talk about Dogecoin, what was really awesome to see because he had to have really thought about it. He's not going to come out and just endorse any shitcoin.
Hmm.
Excuse my language,
Yeah.
but he's not going to come out and just endorse anything. He had to really, put his brain power behind, should I talk about this? And he endorses it. So he obviously sees something in Dogecoin that I think a lot of people are overlooking as well.
Yeah. You can be confident in it. If he can be confident in it,
Exactly.
knowing that his energy will draw more to it and it will be able to withstand it,
Yeah.
that's a pretty big deal. I don't know the man. So very good. We like that you've been outspoken in favor of Litecoin. I think the community generally appreciates this.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know if you always were tweeting about Litecoin.
Oh,
I think at the
no.
beginning maybe you were pure Doge Army stuff.
Yeah, it was all Doge. 21 and 2021 is really when I got into crypto,
Yeah.
and I wasn't I wasn't really much of like a big advocate for self custody and privacy and stuff like that as I am now. I was more of let's just see the number go up, but the more fundamentals you learn, um, you start to really learn what you're actually holding. It just makes the ride all that much better because you know where it's going to end up. But I didn't get into Litecoin until over the summer last year, 2022. Um, and I just started looking into it a little bit here and there. I work a full time job, so it's not like I can dedicate like hours of my day researching. So I would, just research a little bit here and there. And the more I looked into it, the more it made sense. And the more I kind of shifted more of my strategy towards Litecoin, the better off I seemed like I was doing. So it just, for me, it felt less risky than anything else I was seeing. And it ended up, it was significantly less risky than most of whatever everything else was doing. So I have kind of shifted my position more towards Litecoin just because I've seen it, what it can do. I've looked into it. It's basically Bitcoin 2.0. And if you look at Bitcoin, you look at Litecoin, you compare the two. Litecoin is it does everything Bitcoin does, but better,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't deny that. Um, so I mean, it's a great store of value. It's a great for transactions. Um, Arguably, layer one and Litecoin and Dogecoin are they're they both have their pros and cons, but they're both very great for microtransactions where Litecoin is basically nothing of a fee. What is it, 0.001? Where Dogecoin it can be a half of a cent to a cent or so, which really isn't bad if you compare it with most of whatever else you're seeing in the market. Um, so once I kind of learned about Litecoin a little bit more, learned about the transactions and it's what 4 times faster than Bitcoin as far as the layer one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you always hear about the fabled uh, Lightning Network.
Mm-hmm.
And once you kind of learn that everything you do on Bitcoin can be done on Litecoin, you kind of realize that Litecoin is, in my opinion, it's one of the most undervalued assets that we're seeing today.
Mm-hmm.
Comparably to where it's been at previous market or previous years and everything, it's always been one of the top coins out there. So it's, in my opinion, I think it's bound to kind of make a move towards being a top coin. It's a good competitor for a lot of other layer one options, other coins and tokens out there.
I think so. Bitcoin has its place in the world. I don't think it's the end all be all, but I do think it's the reserve currency and it's strong for a reason. And I like Bitcoin. I like the origins of Bitcoin. I think a lot of the community lately I haven't liked as much. Um, but Bitcoin is an important part of the world. Litecoin, of course, I'm mostly attracted to, and of course, even with Dogecoin, the Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, Nakamoto triad,
Mm-hmm.
or the Nakamoto Standard. Indigo Nakamoto has referred to it as that. NakamotoStandard.com is kind of articulates that, at least from one voice, namely my own. Um, I think there's something special about those three working together, but they're all based on Bitcoin. They're
Yeah.
all subsequent to that Nakamoto code consensus protocol, and I think all three of them will need to be. If we can, again, I think libertarian can get criticized for libertarians or libertarian economics can get criticized for kind of a lack of real world examples and everything works out in a theory. There's a fair argument to that. But I do think a lot has proven already between Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Doge of how it functions in the world and what it's capable of. I don't think that Bitcoin alone is capable of facilitating the world's transactions. It's just not, even with layer two. But a Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, with their supply variances, you get a lot closer to realizing that on chain, definitely way more on chain capability with the three coins in tandem, and then you could also add some layer twos to that. Um, I'd like to have Indigo Nakamoto actually come on the show in the future and kind of unpack some of these ideas. I've talked to him about it. But what are your thoughts on the Bitcoin, Litecoin, Doge connection, or this idea of a Nakamoto standard over, for example, a Bitcoin standard?
So just what you said right there. Bitcoin's not going to be able to handle everything. Even you got all these layer twos unpacked on top of it. I love Bitcoin. Um, I think in the bear market, the best thing you can hold is Bitcoin. Um, I'm not going to say whatever I buy or anything, but like I've been kind of leaning more towards Bitcoin in this bear market. If you look at it, it holds up well. I think Bitcoin is it's the granddad. It's what everything's going to be built on top of, but it's not going to be able to handle everything. And what's the next best thing you can do or better? And then you switch over and you look. We have a whole nother mining algorithm here for Dogecoin and Litecoin. They are Bitcoin code, so they're the same. I think Bitcoin's a work of genius, and now you have Dogecoin and Litecoin, and it's the same stroke of genius, just on a different mining algorithm, different parameters and everything. Um, so those three are going to be it's going to be the most Bitcoin like you can get for anything. And if you look at what regulators are talking about, um, I think in terms of regulation and what's to come, Bitcoin and Bitcoin like chains are going to be the most unaffected by any kind of drawbacks in the market when it comes to regulation in the cryptocurrency atmosphere. That's kind of why I've leaned more towards the proof of work Nakamoto Standard, as we would say, versus the proof of stake coins, your Cardano, Ethereum, Binance. Those are all proof of stake, and I think those coins are going to be hit hardest by the regulators, and that's kind of why I've been leaning more towards Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin. They're all fairly launched. They're all decentralized currencies. I think Litecoin just got labeled as a digital asset not too long ago.
Yeah, it was. Yes, correct. By one of the federal
Yeah,
agencies. Yeah.
it is, and there's an arguable case for Dogecoin in there. People argue the supply and everything. My argument is, a commodity doesn't always have to have a limited supply, but that's a conversation for another day. But as far as the Nakamoto Standard, I feel like it's going to be the future. I could be wrong. It's all speculation at the end of the day. But just from what I've seen, it's going to be the most consistent in the future.
Yeah, it's so as the previous in previous times we've had a gold standard, but I argue it was never actually just a gold standard. It was
Right.
bimetallism, but really actually more than bimetallism. The bimetallism would have been in the American environment the silver argument over the gold argument. So you had gold, which was the king, right? World reserve currency, but you also had in tandem silver, copper. We'll stick with those two. So it was never, even under a gold standard, it wasn't actually just a gold standard. It was a gold, silver, and to a lesser degree, copper standard. Of course, from what we are aware of and what is generally accepted, it was based on scarcity. Gold was the most scarce. Copper, for example, was the least scarce or least valuable. And so there's your valuations. So I see something similar with a Bitcoin, Litecoin, Doge. Bitcoin, 21 million, there will never be more than. There will never be more than 84 million a Litecoin, and there will never be a limit on Dogecoin. However, interesting. So there is a criticism, and one of my issues early on, because I had Bitcoin and Litecoin, was Doge. There's something wrong because we don't have a supply cap. However, if you look at it, seeing that it's a non-arbitrary issuance of new coins, it's still very rule based, right? And so the amount of newly minted Doge over time versus the total supply of Doge over time will become negligible to the
Yeah.
point of not feeling any ripple in the pond, so to say. So I think that's actually pretty neat if you look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I think gold, silver, copper was one day, and I think now we have the opportunity for Bitcoin, Litecoin, Doge, and it can act very similarly, and it is very commodity like the former standard, just digital. seeing that it's decentralized and you need work to access these things. But I'll leave it at that. I appreciate your thoughts on that. Maybe we'll land the plane here shortly. I did put out a Q&A. I don't think I gave enough time and enough hints that you were coming on the show. So I have one question for you, and then we'll just maybe open it up for some final statements, or if you want to talk about anything else before we sign off. But you recently tweeted, when Bitcoin is reaching all-time highs again, all of these little shit tokens will be gasping for air.
Yes.
Plan accordingly. So what's your, you kind of alluded to this already, but either way, it's a valid question. Outlook on altcoins. Unpack this tweet for us.
Oh, yes. So they're a gamble. It's playing the lottery is what it is. You're playing the lottery every time you get involved with these. And at the end of the day, they all do the same thing. Every single one of these tokens that come out, they all do the same thing. They all have the same pattern. They pump and then they all fall against Bitcoin. So you might have a big pump here or there. You might have, and here's the thing, at the end of the day, you're going to hear about the success stories. You're not going to hear about the people who are bag holding and losing all their money on these scams. So the money making stories is what really draws people in there. But at the end of the day, it's all going to fall to Bitcoin. Everything, if you look at whatever to BTC, it all falls against Bitcoin. So you got all these different token communities that you'll see all the time on Twitter, and they're saying the same thing. After their big pump or whatever, they're going, oh, it's a bear market. It's a bear market. We're going to see the light after this next bull market. And yeah, it might pump, but it's never going to be the same. It's never going to rise against Bitcoin like how it did in the past. So they can have all the fun they want right now and take all the gamble and the risk. I don't blame them. There's a lot there. There is some people who are going to be able to use other people as exit liquidity. So they're taking that kind of risk, but the people who are believing in these projects is the real victims of it. So that's kind of what I meant by once Bitcoin is really taken off and seeing these all-time highs, no one's gonna give a damn about stupid whatever token out there, safe anything, moon whatever, dog whatever, it doesn't matter. These tokens are not going to go anywhere compared to what Bitcoin's going to do in the future.
Indeed. Anything you want to lead or leave us here as we kind of end the conversation and close the podcast here?
If I had to make one exit little statement here, I would say that the most important thing right now is to kind of look into Bitcoin, Dogecoin, Litecoin, whatever you got to start with. Look into something. Every day a major bank fails. Every day you're seeing insolvencies. I'm not saying this is the answer or this is the great escape or anything like that, but it is an alternative. And if you're able to weather the storms, it could be a good alternative. It's not for everybody, and I would never tell anybody to invest. Anytime someone asks me about my T-shirts, my Litecoin, my Dogecoin, my Bitcoin, anytime anybody asks me about it, I never suggest that they should put any money into it. I just kind of, here's the education, here's the facts around it, and you make your own decisions. You're a grown adult. A lot of people are unaware to what banks really are doing with your money. A lot of people think that their money is just sitting at some vault at a bank. That's not. It's fractionalized, and it has to collapse one day. I hope it's slow. It looks like it's going to be slow, but it's never been a more important time to look into alternate stores of value other than the U.S. dollar.
Hear, hear. Okay. Well, where can we find you? I know I found you on Twitter at Dogecoin Cuban or Doge Cuban. Any other platforms you want to share? Any links, any websites, anything you want to say?
Pretty much just on Twitter right now. But once I get my own place, right now it's kind of in between. But once I do get a house and get established and everything, get my webcam back up, if I'm not recording on my iPhone. I'm
We're
gonna
glad
do.
you're on your iPhone this evening.
Yeah, I tried my best to be here, but once I get more established where I'm at, get my PC back, all that good stuff, I plan on making some YouTube videos and stuff. So I want to kind of dabble more into that. I don't know how much more of my face I'm going to show, but we'll see what kind of road we go down. I have done some YouTube in the past, just kind of playing around. I do have a YouTube channel. I'm not really active on it anymore just because of my current circumstances, but I do plan on making some videos on YouTube or maybe Kick or something like that in the future. I kind of love the podcast kind of kind of feel. I'm not the best public speaker, so I'm not sure how I would be as like as a host or anything, but I definitely want to do something within this space.
Well, very good. We're glad to have you. We appreciate you coming on this evening. Again, if you haven't found him already, go follow Doge Cuban on Twitter, and I think you'll have a good experience. And he's very interactive. He'll give you some feedback as well. So he's not in a high tower on Twitter. He's very responsive. Very good. And I did want to give just kind of a general update before we kind of close all of this. This is kind of for our listeners. We do have the 84 million shop, which I don't ever talk about. We have the chicken promo code at the top of the website if you ever log on, which you can use for anything. It's 10% off immediately. We do have this shirt, the Nakamoto Standard, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Doge embroidered champion tee. We've got a few other ones on there. A lot of the other stuff we do have sold out, but there's stickers, there's coasters. And the next thing we're launching, or I should say relaunching, is we're very pleased to say that we're going to do batch 2 of the Litecoin Coffee Club 100% Honduras roast, which is roasted exclusively for 81 million in the Litecoin Coffee Club, which is litecoincoffeeclub.com. Also available at the 84million.com shop. The 100% Honduras is exactly that. It's a specialty coffee. It's non-blended. It's 100% Honduran. If you go to the website landing page, you can read all the specs regarding the roast, the tasting notes, etc. Batch 1 sold out back in January, early February, and we should be roasting them in about 2 weeks with our friends in Granada Hills, California, House Roots Coffee. They're kind of ground zero for the coffee club. So you, Mr. Cuban, I will send you a bag. So we'll arrange that as a thanks for you coming on the show.
Really?
Everybody else, we can. The landing page is up now on litecoincoffeeclub.com. If you order between now and I believe it's May 15th, it'll be the same price as our first batch. Plus shipping, which hasn't changed. After that time, we're going to mark it up slightly just because of market adjustments. Sadly, in an inflationary environment, things aren't getting less expensive. But I think you'll love the beans. I think we've had really good feedback on batch 1, and I'm glad to say we're coming out with batch 2. So anyway, that's it for me. That's it for the show. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you again, Mr. Cuban, for coming on board. And with that, we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Go buy a shirt.
Cheers. Bye-bye.